The sound of a gavel cracked through the stuffy air of the Gold Hill, Nevada courtroom like lightning splitting a desert sky. Olivia Porter's eyes remained defiant as the verdict was delivered, her hands shaking with indignation rather than fear. At 26, she never imagined she'd face imprisonment for printing the truth in her newspaper that Mayor Harlan Webb and his mining company were poisoning the town's water supply. Miss Porter, for the crimes of slander, public nuisance, and inciting unrest, this court sentences you to 30 days in the county jail, Judge Morrison declared, his jowls quivering beneath a meticulously maintained mustache. Perhaps this will teach you the responsibility that comes with operating a printing press. The packed courtroom erupted. Some townsfolk shouted in protest, others in support of the sentence. Olivia's jaw clenched as she was led away, refusing to bow her head despite the weight of the chains at her wrists. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of a tall figure in the back of the room, a man with eyes as sharp as a hawk's, watching intently from beneath the brim of a weathered Stetson. Preston Barlow leaned against the rear wall of the courthouse, his thumbs hooked into his belt loops, expression unreadable. He hadn't planned to attend the trial, but word traveled fast in Gold Hill, especially news concerning the fiery newspaper editor who'd been stirring up trouble since her arrival 18 months prior. Something about her unwavering stance in the face of corruption stirred something in him, something he hadn't felt in years. The year was 1874, and the West was still wild, especially in mining towns like Gold Hill, where money flowed like the whiskey in the saloons and justice could be bought for the right price. Preston had seen it all before, having drifted through Nevada's silver country for the better part of a decade after the war. At 31, he'd long ago stopped believing that one person could change the way things worked. But watching Olivia Porter's defiance in that courtroom made him question his own resignation. Quite a show, wouldn't you say, Barlow? The silky voice of Edmund Tate, the mayor's right-hand man, cut through Preston's thoughts. Preston didn't turn. Seems like an awful lot of trouble for the mayor to go through over some newspaper articles. Tate's smile didn't reach his eyes. Miss Porter should have kept to reporting on church socials and quilting bees. Women don't have the temperament for real journalism. Is that what this is about? Her being a woman, Preston kept his voice casual, though his fingers twitched at his side. It's about respect for authority, Barlow, something I'd think a man like you would understand. Tate adjusted his expensive waistcoat. The jail might cool her heels a bit, teach her some manners. The county jail was little more than a brick building with 3 cells near the sheriff's office. As Preston passed by later that afternoon, he saw Olivia through the barred window, sitting ramrod straight on a wooden bench, staring at the wall opposite her cell, as if she could burn a hole through it with her gaze alone. Sheriff Thompson emerged from his office, nodding at Preston. "Afternoon, Barlow. What brings you by? Just passing through. Heard about the Porter woman." Thompson sighed, pushing his hat back. "Damn shame if you ask me. She might be headstrong, but she ain't wrong about that mine runoff. My own daughter's been sick from the water." He lowered his voice. "Between you and me, I think the mayor's got the judge in his pocket." Preston studied the sheriff's weathered face. "You disagree with the sentence. Don't matter what I think. Law's the law, even when it stinks to high heaven." Thompson glanced back at the jail. "She's got spirit, though. Refused a pardon offer from the mayor this morning. A pardon, in exchange for printing a retraction and an apology." Thompson chuckled. "Told Webb he could take his pardon and stick it where the sun don't shine. In those exact words, mind you." Preston couldn't help but smile. "Sounds like she's more trouble than they bargained for." "That she is." Thompson looked Preston over carefully. You've got that look in your eye, Barlow. Don't go getting any ideas. The mayor's got men watching this place. Preston raised his hands innocently. Just making conversation, Sheriff. No ideas here. But as he walked away, ideas were precisely what filled Preston's mind. He had no personal stake in Olivia Porter's predicament, yet something about her unyielding principles called to him. It had been a long time since he'd stood for anything other than his own survival. The Silverado Saloon was crowded that evening, the piano player hammering out a lively tune while miners and businessmen alike drank away the dust of the day. Preston sat in his usual corner, nursing a whiskey and listening to the conversations around him. "Porter girls got more spine than half the men in this town," said a grizzled miner at the next table. "My boy got rashes all over from swimming in that creek downstream from the mine. She's the only one had the guts to say something." His companion looked nervously over his shoulder. "Keep your voice down, Frank. Webb's got ears everywhere. Let him hear. What's he gonna do, throw us all in jail?" Preston's attention was drawn to the entrance as Edmund Tate walked in with two of the mayor's hired men. The saloon quieted momentarily before resuming its buzz of activity, though noticeably more subdued. "Gentlemen," Tate announced, placing coins on the bar, "drinks for everyone, courtesy of Mayor Webb. A toast to law and order in Gold Hill." Some men raised their glasses enthusiastically, others reluctantly, and a few not at all. Preston noted the dissenters, gauging the mood of the room. There was discord in Gold Hill, and Olivia Porter had merely given it a voice. As the night wore on, Preston gathered information, moving from conversation to conversation. He learned that the mayor's mining company had recently struck a rich new vein and was working day and night to extract as much silver as possible, dumping waste into the stream that fed the town's wells. He learned that Olivia had published water samples and doctors' reports in her newspaper, the Gold Hill Herald, documenting increased illness in the town. And he learned that she was alone in the world, having inherited the paper from an uncle who had died the previous year. By midnight, Preston had made his decision. Standing at the bar beside the town doctor, he asked casually, "That jail cell it's secure, would you say?" Dr. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "Sheriff's office is solid enough, but the back window's got a loose bar." "Thompson's been asking the town council for repairs for months." He studied Preston carefully. "Why do you ask?" Preston shrugged. "Just curious about our town's security. Wouldn't want any dangerous criminals escaping." "Miss Porter's hardly dangerous. Stubborn as a mule, maybe." The doctor leaned in. "Though if someone were to help her leave, I'd suggest they do it during Thompson's dinner break. He always walks home to eat with his wife around 9. Deputy Higgins takes over, but that boy could sleep through a stampede." Preston nodded, understanding the unspoken message. "Appreciate the information, Doc. Just making conversation, of course." "Of course," Dr. Mitchell replied with the ghost of a smile. "And if you happen to be making conversation with Miss Porter, tell her there are those of us who stand with her, even if we can't say it publicly." At precisely 8:55 that night, Preston Barlow stood in the shadows across from the jail, watching as Sheriff Thompson locked up and headed home for his evening meal. The streets were quiet, most of Gold Hill's respectable citizens having retired for the evening while the less respectable ones congregated at the saloons. Preston waited 10 minutes more, then approached the back of the jail. The window Dr. Mitchell had mentioned was about 5 feet off the ground, iron bars spanning its width. He tested them gently, finding the loose one on the far left. With careful pressure, it shifted in its setting, leaving just enough space for a person to squeeze through. "Miss Porter," he whispered, pressing his face close to the gap. Inside the dim cell, Olivia startled, rising from her cot. "Who's there?" Someone who thinks 30 days is too long for telling the truth. If you want out, now's your chance. She approached the window cautiously. You're the man from the courtroom, the one in the back, Preston Barlow, and you're running out of time to decide. Olivia's eyes narrowed. Why would you help me? I don't even know you. Let's just say I've got a newfound respect for people who stand their ground. He extended his hand through the bars. Are you coming or not? For a moment she hesitated, then her expression hardened with resolve. Move the bar more to the left. I'll need room for my shoulders. Working together, they managed to create enough space for Olivia to slip through, though not without difficulty. Her simple dress caught on the rough edges, tearing slightly as Preston helped her down to the ground. The touch of his hands on her waist sent an unexpected warmth through her despite the cool night air. We need to move quickly, he said, releasing her and scanning the street. Deputy Higgins may be asleep, but someone else might see us. Where are we going? She asked, already following him into the shadows between buildings. I've got a place outside town. We can figure out next steps once we're clear of Gold Hill. They moved silently through back alleys, avoiding the main streets where lamplights and late-night revelers might spot them. Preston led her to a small stable where a saddled horse waited, pawing impatiently at the ground. You planned this, Olivia observed, eyeing the packed saddlebags. I considered various outcomes. He mounted the horse in one fluid motion, then offered his hand. Climb up behind me. She hesitated only briefly before taking his hand and swinging up behind him. If this is some kind of trick, it's not, he interrupted, guiding her arms around his waist. Hold tight. They rode out of town via a seldom-used trail, avoiding the main roads where the mayor might have posted watchmen. The night was clear, stars glittering overhead like scattered diamonds, the quarter moon providing just enough light to navigate by. Olivia clung to Preston's back, the solid warmth of him a strange comfort in the uncertainty of her situation. After nearly an hour of riding, they approached a small cabin nestled among pine trees on a hillside overlooking the valley. A creek bubbled nearby, its waters untainted by the mine's poisons this far upstream. It's not much, Preston said as he helped her dismount, but it's private. Belonged to an old prospector who died last winter. I've been using it as a retreat from town. Olivia looked around cautiously as they entered the cabin. It was simple but clean, one room with a stone fireplace, a narrow bed in the corner, a table with 2 chairs and basic cooking equipment. You live here. I have rooms in town, but I come here when I need space to think. Preston lit a lantern, casting a warm glow over the rustic interior. You can take the bed, I'll sleep by the fire. She crossed her arms, studying him. Why are you helping me, Mr. Barlow? What's your stake in this? Preston removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. No stake. I just don't like seeing someone punished for doing what's right. That's it. You risked breaking the law for a stranger on principle. A half smile crossed his face. Seems I've developed an inconvenient conscience in my old age. You're hardly old, she replied automatically, then flushed slightly at her forwardness. Preston busied himself building a fire in the hearth. You should rest. Tomorrow we need to figure out our next move. The sheriff will have discovered you're gone by morning. Olivia sank into one of the chairs, the reality of her situation finally hitting her. I'm a fugitive now. I've made things worse. Different, not worse, Preston corrected, striking a match. You can't expose the truth from a jail cell. As the fire caught and began to crackle, Olivia watched her unlikely rescuer. In the dancing light, his features were softened, the strong jaw, the hint of stubble, the eyes that seemed to see more than they revealed. She realized with a start that she had placed her life in the hands of a man she knew nothing about. What's your story, Mr. Barlow? What brings a man like you to Gold Hill? Preston fed another stick to the growing flames. Same as most, I suppose, looking for a fresh start after the war. I rode with the 2nd Nevada Cavalry. He glanced up at her. And it's Preston. Mr. Barlow was my father. Were you at the mine before coming to town? He shook his head. I do odd jobs, some ranching for the millers south of town, carpentry when it's needed. I'm not much for going underground. He stood, dusting off his hands. What about you? What brought you to Gold Hill, my Uncle Thomas? He started the Herald back in '65 during the boom. When he died, I inherited everything, the paper, the building, his debts. She smiled wryly. I'd been working at a ladies' magazine back east. Uncle Thomas taught me the newspaper business during my visits. I never planned to run the Herald myself, but here I am. Here you are indeed, Preston agreed. And now the most wanted woman in Nevada. Despite everything, Olivia laughed, a warm, genuine sound that seemed to fill the small cabin. I doubt I've achieved quite that level of notoriety. Preston smiled in return, a real smile that reached his eyes. Give it time. You've only been on the run for a few hours. That night, Olivia slept fitfully in the narrow bed while Preston kept watch by the fire. Her dreams were a chaotic blend of courtroom scenes, jail cells, and the strange sensation of riding through the night with her arms wrapped around a man she barely knew. When she woke at dawn, she found Preston already up, cooking breakfast over the rekindled fire. Hope you like flapjacks, he said, flipping one in a cast iron pan. It's about all I can make that's edible. Olivia rose, smoothing her rumpled dress. It smells wonderful. I didn't realize how hungry I was. They ate in companionable silence, the reality of their situation temporarily set aside in favor of hot food and strong coffee. When they finished, Preston laid out a rough map on the table. We've got options, but none of them are perfect, he explained. You can try to make it to Carson City or even San Francisco, start fresh with a new name, or we can gather evidence against Webb enough to take to the territorial governor. Olivia frowned. I'm not running away. I've done nothing wrong. Except escape from jail, Preston pointed out. A jail I shouldn't have been in to begin with. She traced the map with her finger. I need to finish what I started. People are getting sick, children especially. Webb won't stop until someone forces him to. Preston studied her face, admiration mingling with concern. It won't be easy. Webb has money and influence beyond Gold Hill, and now you're a fugitive. I have something he doesn't, Olivia replied, meeting his gaze steadily. The truth, and apparently I have you as well, unless you're planning to abandon me now that we're safely away from town. Something flickered in Preston's eyes, surprise perhaps, or recognition. You've got me, he confirmed quietly, for whatever that's worth. It's worth a great deal, Mr. Preston. She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. More than you know. Over the next several days, a tentative partnership formed between them. Preston ventured into town to gather information and supplies, careful to avoid suspicion. He learned that Sheriff Thompson had organized a search party, but it was half-hearted at best. Many in town were secretly pleased by Olivia's escape. Meanwhile, Olivia worked tirelessly at the cabin, writing detailed accounts of everything she had uncovered about the mine's pollution and the resulting illnesses. Without her printing press, she copied her articles by hand, preparing them for distribution when the time was right. On the fourth night, Preston returned with news that changed everything. They've arrested Dr. Mitchell, he announced grimly as he entered the cabin. Charged him with aiding your escape. Olivia's face paled, but he had nothing to do with it. Webb doesn't care, he's making an example of him. Preston ran a hand through his hair in frustration. The doctor's wife came to me, thinking I might know where you are. She's desperate, Olivia. They have a young daughter. Guilt washed over her. This is my fault. I need to go back, tell them Dr. Mitchell had nothing to do with it. That won't help him. Webb will just have you both in jail. Preston paced the small room. We need leverage, something big enough to force Webb to back down. Olivia's eyes lit up suddenly. The ledgers. What ledgers? My uncle mentioned them once, the mine's real financial records. Webb keeps 2 sets of books, one for the investors and another showing the actual costs of proper waste disposal, which they're clearly not doing. She stood, excitement building. If we could get those ledgers, we'd have proof they're deliberately cutting corners, knowingly poisoning the water to save money. Preston looked skeptical. And where would these ledgers be? Webb's office at the mine. In his safe, most likely. Olivia's expression was determined. We need to get them. Breaking into the mayor's office at the mine, Preston shook his head. That's a hanging offense if we're caught. So is helping a prisoner escape, she countered. Are you with me or not? Their eyes locked across the room, a silent battle of wills. Finally, Preston sighed. I must be losing my mind. Yes, I'm with you. They spent the next day planning. The Silver Crown mine operated around the clock, but Webb's office would be empty late at night. Security was heaviest near the mine shafts themselves, where silver ore might be stolen, rather than at the administrative building. I used to crack safes during the war, Preston admitted reluctantly when Olivia asked how they would access the ledgers. Union payroll was a tempting target for Confederate raiders. I was tasked with getting to it first if our position was being overrun. Olivia raised an eyebrow. You're full of surprises, Preston Barlow. Not all of them good ones, he replied with a wry smile. As they prepared for the night's mission, a new tension developed between them, an awareness that had been building gradually since the night of the escape. Their hands brushed as they gathered supplies, eyes meeting more frequently, conversations punctuated by meaningful pauses. Neither acknowledged it directly, both too focused on the dangerous task ahead. The mine complex sprawled across the hillside north of town, a constellation of buildings and equipment illuminated by work lamps. Preston and Olivia approached on foot shortly after midnight, having left their horse tethered a safe distance away. They wore dark clothing, faces smudged with dirt to blend into the shadows. The office is that building on the left, Olivia whispered as they crouched behind a stack of lumber. Second floor, corner room with the balcony. Preston nodded, scanning for guards. 2 men by the main entrance, another walking the perimeter. We'll need to time this carefully. They watched the patrol pattern for 20 minutes before identifying their opportunity. When the walking guard rounded the far corner of the building, they darted across the open ground to the shadow of a loading dock, then worked their way around to a service entrance. The door was locked, but Preston made quick work of it with tools from his pocket. Inside, they found themselves in a storage room filled with office supplies and equipment. They moved silently up a back staircase to the second floor. Webb's office door featured a brass nameplate and a sturdy lock. Again, Preston's skills proved valuable as the lock yielded to his manipulation. They slipped inside, closing the door behind them. The office was opulent compared to the utilitarian buildings surrounding it: plush carpet, leather furnishings, and a large mahogany desk. Behind the desk stood the safe, an imposing iron box with a combination dial. Keep watch at the door, Preston instructed as he knelt before the safe. This will take time. Olivia positioned herself to see through the frosted glass panel in the door while Preston pressed his ear to the safe, rotating the dial with careful precision. Minutes stretched into an hour as he worked, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool night air. Someone's coming, Olivia hissed suddenly, stepping away from the door. Footsteps on the stairs. Preston didn't look up. I'm nearly there. Find somewhere to hide. Olivia ducked behind a heavy curtain as the footsteps approached. Through a gap in the fabric, she watched Preston continue working on the safe, his movements deliberate and controlled despite the danger. The footsteps paused outside the door, and the handle turned. A night watchman peered into the office, lantern held high. Preston froze, hidden behind the desk from the man's viewpoint. After a tense moment, apparently satisfied that the office was empty, the watchman closed the door and continued his rounds. Once the footsteps faded, Olivia emerged from her hiding place, heart pounding. That was too close. Preston nodded grimly, returning to the safe. "Got it," he murmured moments later as the mechanism clicked and the door swung open. Inside were stacks of documents, bags of silver coins, and several leather-bound books. Preston quickly identified the ledgers. They sought two sets, as Olivia had described, with dramatically different figures for waste disposal and water treatment. "This is it," Olivia whispered excitedly, paging through them. "Look at these entries. They've been dumping raw tailings into the creek for months, saving thousands while reporting full compliance with safety measures." Preston gathered the incriminating books. "Let's go before our luck runs out." They retraced their steps, moving silently down the back stairs and out the service entrance. They had nearly reached their extraction point when shouts erupted from the direction of the office building. "They've discovered the break-in," Preston said, grabbing Olivia's hand. "Run!" They sprinted across the mine yard, dodging between equipment and supply stacks as lanterns bobbed behind them, voices calling for them to halt. A gunshot cracked through the night, splintering wood near Olivia's head as they ducked behind a wagon. "This way," Preston pulled her toward a drainage tunnel that ran beneath the hillside. They splashed through ankle-deep water, the sounds of pursuit growing distant as they navigated the dark passage. Emerging on the other side of the hill, they paused to catch their breath. In the moonlight, Olivia's face was flushed with exertion and excitement, her eyes bright. Without thinking, Preston reached out to brush a strand of hair from her cheek, his hand lingering longer than necessary. "You're remarkable, Olivia Porter," he said softly. Before she could respond, more shouts echoed from the tunnel entrance. They ran again, making their way back to their waiting horse and riding hard for the cabin, the precious ledgers secured in Preston's saddlebag. Dawn was breaking as they reached their hideout, exhausted but triumphant. While Preston secured the horse, Olivia spread the ledgers on the table, examining their contents more thoroughly. "This is even worse than I thought," she said as Preston joined her. "They've known about the contamination for over a year. There are medical reports here, water tests all buried in these private records while they told the public everything was safe." Preston leaned over her shoulder, his presence warm and solid behind her. "What now? We have the evidence, but we're still fugitives." Olivia turned to face him, their proximity suddenly acute. "We take this to Judge Carson in Virginia City. He's the circuit judge for the territory and has no love for Webb. With evidence this clear, he'll have to act." "Virginia City is 30 miles from here, through country Webb's men will be watching." Preston's concern was evident. "It's a risk." "Everything worthwhile is," Olivia replied, her eyes meeting his. In that moment, something shifted between them, the unspoken tension finding its voice in the small space between their bodies. Preston's hand rose to cup her cheek, his touch gentle. "Olivia." "Yes." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Instead of answering, he lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that started softly but quickly deepened as she responded, her arms slipping around his neck. The ledgers and their plans were momentarily forgotten as they gave in to the feelings that had been building since their first night together. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "I didn't plan for this to happen." Olivia smiled, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Neither did I, but I'm glad it did." They spent the day alternating between studying the ledgers and stealing moments of newfound intimacy, each discovering in the other something they hadn't realized they were seeking. By evening, they had formulated their plan to reach Virginia City, aware that the danger had increased exponentially now that Webb knew his ledgers were missing. They would leave at first light, taking a seldom-used trail through the mountains that Preston knew from his cavalry days. If all went well, they could reach Judge Carson's residence by nightfall the next day. As they prepared for the journey, a distant sound caught Preston's attention: hoofbeats approaching the cabin. He extinguished the lantern and moved to the window, rifle in hand. "Riders coming," he said tensely. "At least 4 of them." Olivia quickly gathered the ledgers, wrapping them in oilcloth. "Webb's men, most likely." Preston checked his ammunition. "We need to leave now, out the back window into the trees." They moved swiftly, gathering only essentials. Preston helped Olivia through the window as the riders drew nearer, their voices now audible in the quiet night. They crept through the underbrush to where their horse was tethered, mounting quickly as lights appeared at the cabin. "There!" A shout went up as they broke from the tree line. "It's them! Get after them!" Gunshots split the night as Preston and Olivia galloped away, leaning low over their horse's neck. The mountain path loomed ahead, a dark ribbon against the forested slope. "Hang on tight," Preston called over his shoulder as they plunged onto the narrow trail, their pursuers close behind. The chase continued through the darkness, their horse straining under the double burden as they navigated the treacherous mountain path. Behind them, Webb's men maintained pursuit, the distance between them shrinking on the difficult terrain. Near a sharp bend in the trail, Preston made a decision. "We need to split up. I'll lead them away while you continue to Virginia City with the ledgers." "No," Olivia protested. "We stay together. It's our only chance." He reined in the horse, helping her dismount. "Take the ledgers and follow this trail. It will lead you to the Virginia City road by morning. Judge Carson's house is the large white one on C Street." Olivia clutched his arm. "Preston, please, I'll find you," he promised, pressing a quick, fierce kiss to her lips. "Go now, while there's time." With reluctance born of newfound love, Olivia took the wrapped ledgers and slipped into the trees beside the trail. Preston watched her go, then turned his horse and rode back the way they had come, firing his pistol into the air to ensure their pursuers followed him instead of discovering Olivia's escape route. Olivia moved through the forest as quickly as she dared in the darkness, the sounds of pursuit growing distant behind her. Tears streaked her dirt-smudged face as she thought of Preston facing Webb's men alone, but she pressed on, determined that his sacrifice would not be in vain. The night seemed endless as she navigated by starlight, following the landmarks Preston had hastily described. By dawn, exhausted and footsore, she reached the Virginia City road, hiding in the underbrush as early morning travelers passed by. She waited until a farmer's wagon approached, driven by an elderly man with a kind face. Stepping out, she flagged him down, fabricating a story about being separated from her traveling party. The farmer offered her a ride into town, asking no questions about her disheveled appearance. Virginia City sprawled across the mountainside, a bustling silver boomtown even larger than Gold Hill. Olivia thanked the farmer and made her way to C Street, locating Judge Carson's imposing house on the upper end of town. With trembling hands, she knocked on the front door. A housekeeper answered, eyeing Olivia's dirty, torn clothing with suspicion. "Yes." I need to see Judge Carson urgently. It's a matter of public safety. The housekeeper hesitated. The judge is at breakfast. If you'd like to leave your name, please, Olivia interrupted. Tell him it concerns Mayor Webb of Gold Hill and evidence of criminal negligence. Tell him lives are at stake. Something in her desperate tone must have convinced the woman, who reluctantly showed Olivia to a sitting room before disappearing into the house. Minutes later, a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes entered. I'm Judge Carson. My housekeeper says you have information about Harlan Webb. Olivia stood. My name is Olivia Porter. I edited the Gold Hill Herald. I've been investigating water contamination from the Silver Crown mine. She unwrapped the ledgers. These are the mine's true financial records, showing systematic poisoning of the water supply to save money. The judge's expression remained neutral as he accepted the books, but his eyes sharpened with interest. He paged through them carefully, the silence in the room growing heavy as Olivia waited. Finally, he looked up. Where did you get these, Miss Porter? She took a deep breath. I was imprisoned for publishing articles about the contamination. After my escape, she faltered slightly. These were obtained from Mayor Webb's office at the mine. You're admitting to jailbreaking and burglary in my home. The judge's voice was stern. I'm admitting to seeking justice when the legal system in Gold Hill failed to provide it. Olivia met his gaze steadily. Children are dying, Your Honor. The evidence is in your hands. Judge Carson studied her for a long moment. You weren't alone in this endeavor, I presume. Olivia's thoughts turned to Preston, fear clutching at her heart. A friend helped me. He may be in danger now. This friend has a name. She hesitated, reluctant to incriminate Preston further, but the judge waved a hand. Never mind. I suspect I'll learn it soon enough. He returned to the ledgers. These are indeed troubling. If authentic, they represent a serious criminal enterprise. They're authentic, Olivia assured him, and there's more. Dr. Mitchell of Gold Hill has been arrested on false charges of aiding my escape. He's innocent. The judge nodded slowly. I see. Well, Miss Porter, it appears I have a busy day ahead. You've taken an extraordinary risk bringing these to me. Will you act on them? She asked directly. Justice isn't always swift, but it is persistent. He closed the ledger. I'll dispatch federal marshals to Gold Hill immediately to secure the mine and arrest Mayor Webb pending investigation. As for you, he paused, considering, you'll need to remain in my custody until this matter is resolved. Olivia's heart sank. Am I under arrest? Let's call it protective custody. You'll stay here as my guest where Webb's men can't reach you. The judge's expression softened slightly. You look exhausted, Miss Porter. Mrs. Jenkins will show you to a room where you can rest while I begin proceedings. Though it wasn't freedom, it was far better than returning to jail. Olivia allowed herself to be led upstairs, where she bathed and changed into clothes provided by the housekeeper, before collapsing onto a soft bed. Her last thoughts before sleep claimed her centered on Preston and his unknown fate. She woke hours later to commotion downstairs. Voices carried up the stairwell, several men speaking urgently. Slipping from the bed, Olivia crept to the door, straining to hear. Fought like hell, took two of them down before they subdued him, a gruff voice was saying. Lucky they didn't kill him outright. And Webb. That was Judge Carson's voice, arrested without incident. His office manager started talking immediately, confirming everything in those ledgers. The mine's been shut down pending a full investigation. Olivia's heart raced. They were discussing the events in Gold Hill. But what had happened to Preston? She opened the door wider, trying to hear more clearly. The prisoner's in bad shape, the unfamiliar voice continued. Doc says he needs proper care, not a jail cell. Bring him here, the judge ordered. I have plenty of room and it will be easier to get both their statements. Footsteps approached the stairs and Olivia retreated into her room. Minutes later, a knock came at her door. Judge Carson entered, his expression grave. "Miss Porter, I thought you should know. Federal marshals have arrested Mayor Webb and several of his associates. The evidence you provided was compelling enough to warrant immediate action." "Thank you," she said. "And, my friend," the judge's face softened with sympathy. "Mr. Barlow was captured by Webb's men last night. He's been injured, but he's alive. They're bringing him here as we speak." Relief and fear battled within her. "How badly is he hurt?" "I don't have details, but he apparently gave a good account of himself." A hint of admiration colored the judge's voice. "He refused to reveal your whereabouts despite considerable persuasion." Olivia pressed a hand to her mouth, tears threatening. "May I see him when he arrives?" "Of course. In the meantime, there's someone else here to see you." The judge stepped aside, revealing Dr. Mitchell standing in the hallway, looking tired but unharmed. "Doctor," Olivia rushed forward, embracing the older man. "You're free. I was so worried." Dr. Mitchell returned the embrace awkwardly. "Thanks to you and that cowboy of yours. The marshals released me as soon as they took Webb into custody." He stepped back, examining her with a physician's eye. "You look like you've had quite an adventure." "It's not over yet," she replied, thinking of Preston. An hour later, a wagon arrived at the judge's house. From her window, Olivia watched as several men carefully transported a stretcher inside. Unable to wait any longer, she rushed downstairs, meeting the procession in the main hall. Preston lay still on the stretcher, his face bruised and swollen, a bandage wrapped around his head. His left arm was splinted, and blood had seeped through his shirt in several places. Despite his injuries, his eyes were alert, searching the room until they found her. "Olivia," he whispered, his split lip curving into a pained smile. "You made it." She knelt beside the stretcher, taking his uninjured hand. "You kept your promise. You found me." "Technically, they found me first," he joked weakly. "Webb's men weren't too pleased about those ledgers." Dr. Mitchell joined them, examining Preston with professional detachment. "Let's get him to a proper bed so I can tend these wounds. Some are quite deep and will need stitching." They moved Preston to a guest room where the doctor cleaned and treated his injuries. 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, numerous lacerations, and a concussion, the evidence of brutal interrogation. Throughout the examination, Olivia remained at his side, her presence seeming to ease his pain more effectively than the doctor's medicines. When they were finally alone, Preston reached for her hand. "Was it worth it? Did the judge believe you? Webb's been arrested along with his men. The mine's been shut down." She squeezed his fingers gently. "It was worth it, but not at this price. You could have been killed." "Some things are worth the risk," he replied, echoing her earlier words. "You are." His eyes held hers, conveying feelings too profound for his injured state to express fully. Over the next week, as Preston recovered under Dr. Mitchell's care, Judge Carson's investigation into the Silver Crown mine gathered momentum. Dozens of witnesses came forward now that Webb's influence was broken, testifying about illness and intimidation. The territorial governor appointed a special prosecutor, and indictments were issued against Webb and his associates for fraud, criminal negligence, and corruption. As for Olivia and Preston, their legal situation remained uncertain. They had, after all, committed several crimes in their pursuit of justice. Judge Carson visited them daily, taking their statements and weighing the circumstances against the letter of the law. On the 10th day, he called them both to his study. Preston, now able to walk with the aid of a cane, sat beside Olivia as the judge outlined his decision. "The territorial governor has reviewed your case thoroughly," he began. While he cannot condone jailbreaking or burglary, he recognizes the extraordinary circumstances and the public good that resulted from your actions. Olivia gripped Preston's hand tightly as the judge continued. Therefore, in light of your service to the territory in exposing this corruption, you are both granted full pardons for any crimes committed in the pursuit of this evidence. He smiled slightly at their expressions of shock. Additionally, Miss Porter, the charges that led to your original imprisonment have been dismissed with prejudice. We're free, Olivia asked, hardly daring to believe it. Completely. You may return to Gold Hill whenever you wish. I understand the Herald's offices have been preserved in your absence by loyal staff. Preston squeezed her hand. Thank you, Your Honor. The judge rose, signaling the end of their meeting. Don't thank me. Justice prevailed because you two were brave enough or foolish enough to fight for it when others wouldn't. The territory owes you a debt. As they left the judge's house later that day, stepping into the bright sunshine of Virginia City's Main Street, Preston pulled Olivia close. His arm was still in a sling, his movements careful around his healing ribs, but his eyes were clear and determined. What now? He asked. Back to the Herald, back to normal life. Olivia considered the question, realizing that normal had forever changed for her. The paper needs me, and Gold Hill needs the truth more than ever as they recover from this. She looked up at him. But I don't think I can go back to the way things were before, not after everything that's happened, not after you. Preston's expression softened. I was hoping you'd say that. With his good hand, he reached into his pocket, withdrawing a simple silver ring. I bought this yesterday, had it made from a bit of silver ore I've carried as a lucky piece for years. Olivia's breath caught as he continued. I'm not a man of many words, but I know what matters to me now. You matter, Olivia. Your courage, your principles, your heart. He held out the ring. I don't have much to offer besides my hands and my word, but both are yours if you'll have them. Tears welled in her eyes as she took the ring, its simple beauty catching the sunlight. Preston Barlow, are you proposing marriage to a woman you've known less than 2 weeks? He smiled, the gesture transforming his battered face. I'm proposing marriage to a woman I've admired since the moment she stood in that courtroom refusing to bend. Time doesn't seem particularly relevant. Olivia slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose on tiptoes to kiss him gently, mindful of his healing injuries. Yes, she whispered against his lips. My answer is yes. They returned to Gold Hill 3 days later, riding side by side rather than sharing a mount this time. The town had changed in their absence. The mine stood silent, its machinery idle as federal inspectors examined every aspect of the operation. The streets were quieter, many of Webb's most loyal supporters having departed once his arrest became known. The Herald's office was intact, preserved by Olivia's young apprentice, Timothy, who had continued to publish a reduced version of the paper during her absence. The boy's face lit up when Olivia walked through the door, Preston at her side. Miss Porter, you're back. Everyone's been talking about how you exposed the mayor and saved the town, Olivia laughed, embracing the teenager. I had considerable help, Timothy. This is Preston Barlow, my. She hesitated, glancing at Preston with a smile. My fiancé. Timothy's eyes widened. Fiancé. But you've only been gone 2 weeks. Sometimes, Preston said, ruffling the boy's hair. 2 weeks is all it takes to find what you've been looking for your whole life. In the days that followed, Olivia resumed publication of the Herald, documenting the investigation and the community's recovery efforts. New water treatment facilities were being constructed, funded by assets seized from Webb's company. Dr. Mitchell reported declining illness rates as the creek began to clear of contaminants. Preston, once his injuries healed, took a position as deputy sheriff when Thompson offered it. "Figure a man with your skills could do some good in an official capacity," the sheriff had said with a wink. "Less risky than breaking women out of my jail in the middle of the night." Their wedding took place that autumn, a simple ceremony in the town square where so much had changed. Dr. Mitchell gave Olivia away, and Timothy served as Preston's best man, proudly holding the rings until the crucial moment. Judge Carson made the journey from Virginia City to officiate, his normally stern countenance softened for the occasion. "I've sentenced many men in my career," he said during the ceremony, "but it's a rare privilege to unite two people whose courage changed the course of justice in our territory." As Preston and Olivia exchanged vows beneath a canopy of golden leaves, the gathered townspeople of Gold Hill witnessed not just a marriage, but a symbol of their community's renewal, a testament to the power of truth spoken fearlessly, and love born in the most unlikely circumstances. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Carson concluded with a smile. "May your life together be as extraordinary as your beginning." 5 years later, the Herald office buzzed with activity as Olivia Barlow finished the layout for the following day's edition. The front page featured news of Gold Hill's formal incorporation as an independent city, finally separating from Virginia City's governance. "Mama, Papa's home." 4-year-old Thomas Barlow burst into the office, his little sister Clara toddling behind him. At 2, she was the image of her mother, with the same determined set to her chin. Preston appeared in the doorway, his sheriff's badge gleaming on his chest. Gold Hill had elected him to the position the previous year, after Sheriff Thompson retired. "Sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Barlow, but these two insisted on seeing the press in action." Olivia smiled, lifting Clara into her arms while Thomas examined the type cases with careful fingers. "Just in time. We're about to run the first copies." Preston crossed the room to kiss his wife, a gesture that still held the same warmth as their first embrace in that mountain cabin years before. Big news day, the biggest. 5 years ago, this town was under Webb's thumb, its water poisoned, its future bleak. She gestured to the headline, "Gold Hill claims independence, charts new future." "We've come a long way," Preston agreed, watching Timothy, now the paper's assistant editor, prepare the press. "All because one woman refused to stay quiet in jail," Timothy added with a grin. "And one cowboy was just crazy enough to break her out." Preston laughed, his arm sliding around Olivia's waist. "Best jailbreak of my career without question." As the press began to roll, printing the story of Gold Hill's newest chapter, Olivia leaned into her husband's embrace, surrounded by the family and future they had built together. From a desperate escape on a moonlit night to this moment of quiet triumph, their journey had been unpredictable and sometimes dangerous, but like the headline stated, they had claimed their independence and charted a new future, one day and one truth at a time. And in the end, that had made all the difference.